He is State Senator Joe Pittman joining us this morning. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Todd, good morning to you.
Good to have you with us here today. You have been heard from a few times here in this past week or so in Harrisburg. There have been a number of proceedings in which you've been one of the key players and one of the key voices raising concerns. And so there are a lot of different areas that we could touch upon this morning. And I want to start with one of the ones that has really come to the forefront, and that is the state system of higher education, the state system redesign, approved last week by the Board of Governors and moving forward. And as this whole conversation about the redesign, about the finances of our state systems and our schools, and particularly IUP, has gone on, I don't feel that the full story is really clearly understood by everybody involved. There are a lot of different side issues all combining to make one big financial tangle for IUP and its sister schools, isn't there?
Yes, this is one of those issues where you could say that there are many straws on the camel's back right now, and from many different reasons. And you can go chiefly to our overall demographic issues that we have here in the state. The state system has lost 30,000 students over the last 20 or so years. When you look at our Commonwealth, and I think in some respects the system is treated a little unfairly because we're not looking at our higher education system as a whole. And when you look at our entire higher education system and the offerings that we have here in Pennsylvania, the supply greatly outstrips the demand. Just think about where IUP is right now and what it's surrounded by. You have Penn State Du Bois, you have Penn State New Kensington, you have Pitt Greensburg, Pitt Johnstown, Penn State Altoona, and then you have the whole private sector college dynamic and the community college dynamic, which I would say, though, the community colleges are becoming more and more the springboard to the system with the partnerships they have there. That's, to me, the overriding issue and problem that we have. And so the demographics are not changing. The census data that was posted here last week further underscores that. This is really a national issue. Our population nationally is stagnant. Here in Pennsylvania, it is stagnant, and that is a real problem. So we have to right-size the system, and there's only so many ways to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the problem is, well, there are a number of different ways to look at it. The chancellor has said for many years now, since he came really to the state system, that if we make an IUP education not much different in terms of its affordability from a Penn State education, IUP is going to lose out in that mix. Right. And that is one of the issues. Of course, as you have discussed, and very famously now on the in the Senate with Chancellor Greenstein, the concept of schools that are making it in whatever way they can, such as IUP, Westchester, having to prop up schools that aren't making it. That's another thing. Too many buildings, too many mortgages. It's really something. It's a hole that is very, very deep, and it's going to take an awful lot of work. And as our poll said last week, I think close to 70% of people don't think the redesign is capable of doing that.
I don't think the redesign alone is. I mean, I don't think we should have blinders on that this redesign is going to solve the problem. This redesign is really trying to get us, at least from what I can understand, back to a better sense of stability within the system. Yeah, I commend the Board of Governors for holding the line on tuition the last 3 years. That is a trend that probably needs to continue. I do think we as a legislature have not kept up with increases in funding to the system, although, as I've said before, I've been a little suspect of adding more money to that budget whenever I don't see other universities taking the steps that IUP has taken to make sure we're using the dollars they have most efficiently. So that's a bit of a quandary. I've become increasingly parochial about this issue. I will admit I'm not as concerned about the success of the system as I am the success of IUP.
Yeah, And the tie between the two of them obviously is very strong as well.
Hmm.
But IUP is the overriding concern of everybody around this area
It is.
in particular. Those are jobs, and more so than that, those are the educational opportunities afforded to our kids.
Yep.
And so that is one issue that has come up, and you've been a part of in Harrisburg. There have been others, and of course, Reggie is something that we've been beating around here for the last couple of years since October of 2019, and whether Pennsylvania needs to be a part of that. The Reggie argument and some of the other economic news that has come out there was a very big release yesterday about the GOP contending with Governor Wolf over the loss of another manufacturing opportunity. They all come to an overarching, I think, issue of does the governor of a state have too much power? Is, as you have termed it quite often, the balance of power the way that it should be in Pennsylvania right now?
Well, it worries me. I think in this respect, the administration slow played the permitting process. They gave no support to U.S. Steel for the huge plan that they had in place that would have actually cut emissions in half had they developed the technology. And I will say, I give Lieutenant Governor Fetterman a lot of credit. He is one of the few on his side of the aisle that have spoken in favor of the need to give U.S. Steel that support. But the county, Allegheny County Health Department, DEP, they clearly walked away from this. They turned their heads. They showed no sense of trying to coordinate and support the permitting process that would have been undertaken. Yeah, that's a 180 from what we saw whenever the cracker plant came into Beaver County. The administration bent over backwards to make that project work, and here we are about 1 year away from it being up and running. And so that is a real concern. It's a very disappointing announcement. You know, this is a regional economy, and if you go back to the IUP discussion, you know, if we do not have students, if we do not have families, if we do not have kids in our communities, they obviously are not going to be going to places like IUP. And so it's a vicious cycle, and we have to break that cycle. And the only real way to break it is to promote economic activity, not discourage it.
And if jobs go away, then the people who have those jobs are going to have to go someplace else too to find work.
That's right. That's right.
And so it's a cycle that's really a harmful one for our area in particular.
Very painful.
All of those things are issues that are being dealt with by you and by others in Harrisburg right now, trying to come up with the right formulas for making things work in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, you're trying to put together a budget for this state in the wake of the pandemic, and the pandemic certainly isn't over yet. There's still a lot of work to do in that arena. How are those discussions happening?
Well, I just saw a headline that our revenues for April again beat expectations, and I didn't have time to read the details, but I will say in the short run that our revenues are coming in pretty strongly, certainly much stronger than they did last year. We, of course, have the federal stimulus money, which I have to caution again is one-time money, but nevertheless, we have $6 billion from the federal government sitting in our treasury. The key is for us to recognize that it's one-time money, and we have to figure out how best to make use of it. And so I think that the budget itself, at least for the coming year, is in a very workable situation, a very workable format. To me, it's all of the issues that surround it. Reggie being one of them, you know, the governor's push for recreational marijuana, the interest in reforming charter schools, cyber charter education, and all of those other issues tend to then come into play during budget season. And I think that's where things will get complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And meanwhile, the traditional issues that we're still waiting to get resolved, such as property tax reform, those things wait their turn, and people say, well, they've had their turn and nothing really happened, so let's move on from them. But that's not something that people want. They don't want to move on.
You're right. And the problem is we have no consensus on how to move on with the property tax issue. I've always been very clear where my point of view is on this in terms of the property tax on your home is tantamount to rent to the government. your home is your castle. And that's not hyperbole, that is the truth. But if you're continuing to rent it from the government, then it's not really your home. And so I've been open to any ways to eliminate the property tax, particularly on the homestead. But as we've talked before, if we're going to shift that kind of a tax burden, we have to be prepared to accept a tax on the other end of the equation. And invariably, that's where the problem comes. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, as they say. And we will need to significantly increase other taxes if we would eliminate the property tax.
Yeah, and that's just been something really tough to push over the line.
It is.
A couple of more moments with Senator Joe Pittman. Constitutional convention or constitutional questions, the amendment questions coming up later this month. It's now the month of May. It's just a couple of weeks before folks will get a chance to vote on there's three. There's three constitutional.
There's actually
four.
There's a fourth one about giving fire companies or the state fire commissioner ability to borrow additional funds, which I would think would be pretty non-controversial.
Yeah. Okay. So. But the big ones that folks are really concerned about have to do with the powers of the governor and the separation of the different branches of our government. Are you satisfied that the proper urgency is out there for folks with these amendments, or have they sort of been pushed away because of all of the other pressing issues?
No, I'll tell you, I've been pleasantly surprised at the amount of attention those ballot questions have gathered. And wherever you are on those questions, the need to engage in advance on the issue and understanding them is very important. And we've gotten a lot of traffic from individuals wanting to better understand that. And also, I think it's important to point out that all voters can vote on those questions on May 18th. Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever your party affiliation is, you do have the right to vote on those ballot questions on the 18th.
Okay. And so folks that's one of my big bugaboos is people talk about voter registration as if that's the big answer, and it's a part of the answer, but educated voters is really, really what we're after. People don't know, and just because there's an R or because there's a D next to somebody's name, I hate it when people say, okay, that's why I'm voting for this person, because of the letter after their name. I want to know positions.
That is not healthy. You get what you put into it, you get out of it. And I do think all voters are much better served for taking a few minutes and trying to understand who people are and what they're about.
All right. Very good. Anything we need to tell folks about that's coming up from your standpoint?
Well, I'm optimistic. This has been a tough time. It continues to be difficult, but we have to keep moving forward. I think we're going to have a couple economic development announcements here in the coming weeks that are pretty positive. We've done some great work on the broadband initiative. I give the county commissioners a lot of credit, starting to hear from real people who've been able to hook up to the service and be connected, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
So, otherwise, difficult to see the future is.
Yeah.
As they would.
I knew he would do that. He was going to throw on May the 4th.
I had to get a little Yoda in there.
He had to throw some Yoda in with this. He is Senator. Did you think of that on the spur of the moment, or had you planned that?
Well, I wanted to bring, because you brought May the 4th up, I wanted to bring that in somehow, but I knew I was running out of time, so I had to fit it in somewhere.
And you knew I had never seen a Star Wars movie.
That's unfortunate, Todd. It really is.
No, it's preservative is what it is. Senator Joe Pittman, thanks.
Thank you, Todd.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. The CBS Sports Minute brought to you by